Good afternoon, good morning. This is Julie Cohen. I am the CEO of Work Life Leader. We are an executive coaching, training, and leadership development organization, and you're tuned in to Work Life Leader Live. This is a conversation, I liken it to a conversation. I get to talk to smart people about interesting things that are the intersection between work, life, and leadership. Any of those topics, some of those topics, or all of those topics. And we also have a book group, the Work Life Leader Live book group, which our next book for that is going to be The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. It's on my desk. I couldn't remember the author. But today, as you can see by our title, we're going to be talking about the work-life conundrum, balance, integration, or what? So as we dive in, it's my pleasure to introduce you to my guest, Sharlene Shikhmuradova, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer at Alameda County Probation Department. Hi, Sharlene.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm thrilled you're here. And so if you're watching live right now, it is Friday, April 16th. It's actually my dad's 90th birthday today. So he's not watching, but hi, Dad. Happy birthday. And it is about noon Eastern on the East Coast of the U.S., and it's 9 a.m. On the Pacific Coast. And if you're watching live, please say hello. Let us know you're here. Tell us where you're watching from in the chat, and use hashtag live so we know you're here. We really want this to be a very interactive discussion. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, and you will help shape where we go in the conversation. So before we dive into our icebreaker, which we always start with, I want to introduce Sharlene formally and tell you about her great background, which is she's going to have a lot of insight about this topic because of what she has accomplished and is currently doing. So Sharlene is the Chief Human Resources Officer for the Alameda County Probation Department and is also the CEO of a human resources consulting firm that she founded in 2018. Sharlene is an organizational psychologist, a seasoned executive, and a senior certified human resources professional with over a decade of HR experience in public and private organizations. She's worked for global companies in various industries, from banking, tech, fitness, manufacturing, and government, including law enforcement and fire prevention. She holds a BA in business administration, an MS in psychology, 4 HR professional certifications, and a certification in public administration. I'm just tired reading all that. So as a lifelong learner, she is currently pursuing her candidacy for a doctorate in psychology, studying how motivation, personality, self-regulation, growth tendencies, and innate psychological needs intersect, affecting employee behaviors. So Sharlene, when you're done your dissertation, I want to invite you back here to talk about that. Okay, so we'll put that on the calendar. And last but not least, she is a mom of 2 young girls. She's an avid athlete, runs marathons and Spartan races, and devotes most of her energy in participating to promote equality and justice, inspiring the next generation of sheroes. So what an awesome bio. So welcome again, Sharlene.
Thanks, Julie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So for our regular watchers, they know I always like to start with an icebreaker, and it's just a question. And after Sharlene and I answer, we're going to come to you and ask you to answer. So please put your answers in the chat box while Sharlene and I are answering the question. So Sharlene, what's going on, in the middle of COVID with your work-life satisfaction currently? And what do you call that? What do you call that work-life thing in your life?
Well, to be quite honest, I define work-life, some call it work-life balance, some call it work-life integration. And it's funny that you ask, because I see it as how one person would manage their life at work and their personal life, whether it's at home or whatever the case may be. And there are certain ways that several people handle it. For me, what worked for me was I had to have support. And that was important for me in order to maintain that so-called balance, and in order for me to manage and feel good, right, about what I do at work and what I accomplish at home. Being a mom too, a full-time working professional, and having two very young children, I encounter that mom guilt, right? And sometimes I would say I had those days where I feel really guilty about focusing my energy and time at work rather than focusing more time on my family and my children. But I think I've developed certain ways for me to kind of check in with myself and say, don't feel too bad, right, about the decisions that we make.
All right, so we're gonna be exploring this this topic from a couple different angles. I'm gonna answer the icebreaker too, but I want to invite everyone else while you're watching to think about what's going on in your work-life situation right now. How is it? How would you rate what's going on? And what do you call that? So that's kind of what the main icebreaker is. So for me right now, today, and I say over the past couple months, my work life, I call it work life satisfaction. And I'm from the old school. Sharlene knows I actually wrote a book about this topic published in 2009 or 2010, and it's called Your Work, Your Life, Your Way: The 7 Keys to Work-Life Balance. And right about then, the whole issue of that term work-life balance started coming out of favor. And I in the middle of publication, I thought, oh my God, do I need to rewrite the whole book and replace, balance with integration? Because everyone that's when integration really came into the vernacular. I mean, it's always around, but it really started taking off, around that time. And so I surveyed a bunch of people, about 400 people, and I said, what do you call this? And what was interesting, I got 62 different phrases. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going with work-life balance. And then that really related to kind of what I felt was that it's a very personal definition. That satisfaction that we get from both working and not working, and the intersection, whether it's integrated or separate or different every day, is so personal. So I actually use the shorthand work-life balance because I think it's the word most people are familiar with. But to me, it's about how satisfied I am. Am I personally, professionally, and am I using my time and energy how I want to? And so right now, personally, things are really good. COVID has, again, with all the downsides of COVID, one thing that it's enabled me to do was to actually spend a lot more time taking care of myself, exercising every day, doing a couple other things that always got pushed to the wayside because I was either traveling or, other responsibilities. So for me right now, my work-life satisfaction is really high. And I'm also trying to be really mindful of, as things are opening up, which they're happening soon, which I'm very excited about. If I want to stay at this level, I'm going to have to be really mindful. So that's our icebreaker. We'd love to hear from you. If you are watching live, again, it is April 16th, Friday, a little after noon Eastern, a little after 9 Pacific. Tell us what's going on in your work life. How satisfied are you with what's going on right now? What's making you satisfied? If you're not, what's the challenge? And what do you call this if you do? And if you work in an organization, does your organization have a term that they use? Or, in your head when you think about this? We'd love to get your thoughts. So please put it in the comments. And when you hit send, we'll see it and we'll share, and Sharlene and I will comment on it. So now we're going to start with the first question. So let's talk about your organization. If you want to give maybe a very brief introduction of your organization and kind of how many people are there, how has it been impacted by COVID, and how has COVID impacted work-life balance, work-life satisfaction in your organization?
So I currently work for the Alameda County Probation Department, and in essence, we provide wraparound services to our clients who have been formerly incarcerated, for the adult side, and then we also service or provide services and supervision to juveniles. So we also operate a facility, juvenile detention facility, which we employ rehabilitative services. We partner with our local partners here in the county to provide behavioral health, mental health services, medical and educational services to our clients. So I have a very diverse workforce. I have deputies, deputy probation officers out in the field. We also have juvenile institutional officers who are assigned in the facilities that help provide those wraparound services to our clients. And then we also have the administrative side and the executive leadership side, where we focus a lot on the office administrative support, contracts, all that. And for us, COVID has impacted our organization drastically. And that has shifted a lot of our priorities as far as being innovative, because we work in local government. We are considered critical infrastructure workers. So when the pandemic hit, we were still required to go out in the field and really did not have much flexibility as far as, taking time off, and what the other industries may have had opportunities for. But for us, it allowed us to actually think outside the box and be creative as far as, okay, did we have all safety equipment in place to make sure that we keep our employees safe, right? And it was hard on some of our employees because they had to go and make that decision too, right? To find out, okay, do I continue to go to work, or watch out for my family and myself, and quarantine and, just shelter in place. So there's a lot of anxiety, ambiguity in the beginning, but we worked through it as an organization and ensured that, we provided the support, we provided the leadership, and provided the resources so that, folks are reassured that they have the resources that they would need, the support that they would need in order to show up and still continue to be safe in the workplace, and also, feel that they have what they need and have that peace of mind is the most important thing, in my opinion, that really lacked when the pandemic hit. And
right. So
I think that's the impact.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you get feedback in any formal way around work-life balance, satisfaction, work-life integration? And because that's what I want to get to. I want to hear from you and our audience kind of what's going on current state, and how what you see maybe happening after COVID to sustain a reasonable or a sustainable work-life situation.
So what we did was we offered employee assistance services to our employees, and also opened up channels of communication, right? To ensure that supervisors understand, what our employees are indeed going through, and help them and assist them with finding that balance, and making sure that the employees feel comfortable as far as voicing out their concerns amidst this unprecedented event, right? So I think that was what was helpful for us to kind of get a pulse on it and then address that balance.
Right. So I want to go to the audience and ask some questions and then come back to you and keep our discussion going. But I want to pause for a minute. This is Julie Cohen. I'm Julie Cohen, and I'm with Sharlene Shikhmuradova, and we're talking about work-life conundrum, balance, integration, or what? And we have a couple guests already here. I want to say hi to Felicia Corbett from Phoenix, Bill Hyman from the Philadelphia area, Stephanie Farley from Wichita, Kansas. We have a national representation of multiple time zones. So again, if you're here watching live, let us know you're here. Say hello. Also, we're now starting to go into the conversation. We're looking at how COVID has impacted work-life balance. And I also want to start thinking about what happens after COVID, when people are vaccinated, when travel starts, when when there's different expectations about going back to the office. What are you concerned about if you're watching and your life and work changed significantly with COVID? What you're excited about and concerned about moving back into the post-pandemic world of work. If you're a leader, if you have a team, Sharlene, I want to come back to you on this question. But if you're a leader or a team, what are you doing to support your talent, your direct reports? Because you said you kind of instructed your leaders to support employees on providing support in this kind of challenging time. So I'm curious to hear how you advise managers and leaders to support their direct reports, or any examples of what you saw people do to support work-life balance or integration.
So for us in our organization, we opened up the channels of communication from the top down. So starting from our chief probation officer all the way down to line staff. Our chief probation officer, we at the beginning of the pandemic, we had held COVID-19 weekly meetings just to basically keep in touch of what the updates are, what our clients are going through, how we can we address them given the factors of the pandemic, how the cases are increasing, and also employing employing a high touch approach, right? That meant that we had to disseminate, regular memoranda, do video messages from our chief probation officer and our executive team, and ongoing conversations about, okay, here are the COVID factors that are affecting the number of cases, or here are some of the challenges that we're encountering with our clients, or, we have high caseloads for a particular section, how can we balance those amongst, our workforce?
Right.
And also take into consideration the personal aspects of what our employees are going through. Because at the beginning of the pandemic and still to date, we have a number of employees that are out for various type of reasons, right? So as a leader, trying to be cognizant and mindful and compassionate overall of what our employees are going through, and providing grace and thinking outside of the box as far as, okay, how can I assist this employee? Given the number of benefits that we have, what we offer, do we employ reasonable accommodation? Do they have a medical, situation? Taking those factors into consideration and just employing the compassionate delivery of services to our employees.
So you said a couple really good things that I think I want to pull out. First of all, it's the approach of the leader, and you used 3 really great adjectives: cognizant, mindful, and compassionate. Those are not only important when a manager or leader is trying to pay attention to one of their direct reports' work-life situation and the challenges that may come with it. That's great leadership, right? If you hold those qualities and facilitate supporting your team members to operate at their best, whether it is around kind of work-life balance, work-life satisfaction, or any area in which they want to grow and develop. So I want to brand that with everyone should wear that on the t-shirt, cognizant, mindful, and compassionate. Another thing that you talked about that I think is really important is you kind of a very, and this is kind of the nature of all of my business, is a very holistic nature, that you have to look at each person individually and understand they're each going to have different needs, and they're going to need different supports. And that the critical component you're talking about there is communication and really engaging with each person, so you can support them in whatever way they need, which takes more time. It's much harder to do that,
right?
And yet the results are really will be exponentially better. So let's get some input. If you're watching, we'd love to, if you're watching live or not. Again, it is Friday, April 16th. It's 12:20 Eastern, 9:20 Pacific in the US. And if you're watching elsewhere from around the world, we'd love to hear from you too. We'd love to hear from 2 angles. Personally, how your work-life situation, your work-life satisfaction is right now. Any concerns you have as the world begins to open up, anything you're looking forward to as the world opens up and your work may return to a different way than it's been for the last year. So we'd love to hear that. And if you're an organizational leader, or you're in human resources, or you're an executive coach and you have clients, I see some names I know that are coming in from all different professions here. So we'd love to hear kind of what your concerns are, what your challenges are, and maybe what your successes are. And also, if you have any questions that Sharlene and I can kind of riff on, we'd be happy to do that. So please share in the chat box, and we want to hear your thoughts, questions, and if anything we say you don't agree with, we want to get that too. So I want to share a situation kind of building off what you've mentioned, to a couple client situations that I've had recently. So one organization I work with, they were a very, they're based in New York City, and most of their work was on site in their offices in New York, and they had an office they have an office in Toronto, and for those around New York City, commuting into the office was very significant, where commutes would range between 45 minutes to sometimes 2 hours each way for this organization, for their leaders, for their professionals to get into the office. And so I currently was working with a group of like 15 or 16 of their leaders, and COVID, although very disruptive, about half of that group, after things settled, where their satisfaction, their work-life satisfaction skyrocketed, because they regained 3-4 hours a day from not having to commute. And they were as productive. They were actually more productive. They could spend some of those 4 hours that they were normally commuting actually working, while still sustaining or even increasing productivity while getting a lot of time back. So there was a lot of people who were satisfied. And then there was the flip side, where there was a lot of people who weren't satisfied, who missed that commute, who missed that colleague relationship, who missed the opportunity to have a break and have a decompression time from leaving home, going into work, and vice versa at the end of the day. And some found the workload much higher working at home. So the same organization, people in very similar roles, had extremely different experiences and impact with this experience. So I'm curious how you see that. And those who are watching, how you've addressed that, and what kind of support you need or want from your organization. So thoughts on that, Sharlene? What individuals as well as organizations could provide to address any of those?
It's funny that you mentioned that, Julie, because I'm actually the latter, where I found myself absolutely stressed when I'm at home. And I think that that's probably because, I have two very young children, and they're, they really wanted me to participate in a lot of their activities, which I'm not complaining about. I welcome that opportunity at any time, but, it compounds over time. And for me, I needed that delineation. And I needed that delineation as far as, okay, this is time for work, and this is time for, spending time with family. Before I answer your question, I wanted to touch base and maybe ask you a question too.
Yeah, great.
I read your book.
Thank you.
And what really resonated with me was your analogy of how you define work-life balance. You had described three things. I believe it was a spinning top, a trapeze, and I forget what the other one was.
Tightrope.
Yes. So, and I think that those examples and those analogies are so impactful because it really gives you a picture that you can't have it all, and if you really try, you're going to fall. Something's going to drop. And that, I think that was really great.
Thank you. Well, it's interesting that you say that. They are very visible, and when they stop, there's different impacts. So a spinning top, it just falls over and stops. If you're on a tightrope and you fall to, something serious. And, spinning top, tightrope. What was the third one? This is my brain. Spinning top, tightrope, trapeze or trampoline? Trapeze?
I think it was the trapeze. Yeah. I can't remember off the top of my head either.
Exactly.
But those are really good.
Is, different definitions, different impact. So you were going to answer another question. Were you going to?
So you were asking me about how our organization supports wellness, right? Yeah. So I mentioned EAP and opening up the channels of communication and ongoing conversations with folks. One other thing that I think was very helpful for us was we launched a mindfulness campaign where, because we're a law enforcement agency, we're always on the go kind of mindset. I could see that for me. But I think that launching those mindfulness webinars and sessions was helpful for our employees because it helps them get in touch with themselves and actually get to the core of what they actually would need, right? And look inward, because we're a type of organization that we're a giving organization, right? So we provide services to others, we're there for the public, but very seldom do we actually do the opposite and look inward and say, hey, it's actually my turn, to give grace to myself, give myself a break. And we have, and I'm so proud to mention this because we have such dedicated employees who had worked countless hours during the pandemic and continue to provide, that support to our clients, regardless if, they were, out there getting exposed to the virus. And they're so dedicated. But I wanted to also give something back to those really dedicated employees through recognition. And our chief probation officer as part of her strategic plan, established a recognition program for employees, and hand in hand with that, also, provide wellness and support. And part of that support system involves, peer-to-peer support as well, and having that person that you could go to have that conversation, especially if you have such a traumatic experience with something at work, right?
Got it. Yeah, that's super. So, I'm curious, and maybe your organization hasn't been as impacted as much, is, post-pandemic. I know I'm halfway to vaccinated, and, a lot of people are getting vaccines, and, people are, things are opening up. I see, organizations I'm working with, they're putting dates on the calendar of when, they're going to be inviting people back into the office. Yes. I now have on my calendar, we have training and leadership development activities in person later in the year. Mm-hmm. So it's happening. So I guess I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, as we go back, what do we as individuals and what do organizational leaders need to take away from this experience, from, kind of what happened to work-life balance during COVID to carry forward. And I think what, another client example that I was talking to recently, his whole work-life situation kind of collapsed in that he works in an organization where it's over multiple time zones, a global organization. Mm-hmm. And because he was able and he wasn't traveling, where he normally took only calls like early in the morning to deal with the time zone at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m., now all of a sudden he was still doing the 7 a.m. and 6 a.m. And because he wasn't in hotels or traveling, he was also taking calls at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 p.m., 8, 9, 10 p.m. So he was now taking calls from 6, 7 a.m. to 9, 10 p.m. And his whole workday, was, now 18, 19 hours. And, he's at the place where burnout, he's not, if this doesn't change, he's not going to be able to stay in this role. And so, he knows he needs to adjust once he starts having to travel again. So I'm curious if your organization, how you personally are thinking about it, and maybe from an organizational standpoint, what you see happening as we return to some kind of new normal. And before you answer that, take a second to think about that. I want to invite people who are watching, what are concerns you might have for yourself, for your team, for your organization as offices open up, as business travel might start again, and your accessibility and availability expectations that others have of you and you have of them may be changing. So would love to hear if, again, if you're an organizational leader or a manager or just an individual who's concerned about this, where you're coming from. So please share in the chat box. Sharlene, do you want to comment on it? And then I'll comment kind of my personal and professional standpoint.
Yes, would love to, Julie. So as far as vaccinations go, we had employed vaccination sites in the county here. And when that happened, we encouraged our employees to get vaccinated, in preparation to bringing them back in the workforce, right? But what I could say is, getting vaccinated for some people, right, is a very personal choice. Some choose to do it, some choose not to do it. So, and I think that as leaders, we should be conscious of that choice of employees and develop ways around how we can, support those employees who choose not to get vaccinated when we return them back to work. And, in my organization, what we've done is, we've developed a workplace readiness protocol, right? Or procedures when we do open back up. The governor here in California has plans to reopen the California economy sometime in June. So that's around the corner, right? So, while that's happening in the background, on the state level here in local government, we're trying to kind of like, okay, let's go get ready. Let's get our offices set up right. Making sure that each workstation, it used to be very close to each other, less than 6 feet. And now we had to go and actually reconfigure our offices and seating arrangements and making sure that everyone has, enough space between them. We ensured that we have, adequate air purifying systems, in our buildings. So, thinking of those things to prepare to return our folks back into the workplace, making sure that they have their personal protective equipment if they're going out in the field. And, all those precautionary measures to ensure that employees, do feel safe. And, if they choose not to get vaccinated, that we provide further support as leaders to those employees and letting them know, hey, we're here for you. If you need anything, we're just a phone call or email away. And I think that when we're trying to go and look into returning people back to work, some folks are going to be really uncomfortable with returning to the work site, right? So we're also exploring, okay, which positions can we actually afford to allow to telecommute on a more regular basis? So right now, as you know, we're in this huge social experiment of, trying to figure out whether telecommuting or teleworking actually works. What are the benefits? What are the impacts to the organization? Is it affecting the bottom line for some private organizations? So for the most part, recent studies show that there's benefit to teleworking, right? But there's also emerging studies that show, some industries are not suited to teleworking, mainly manufacturing, public service, like my organization. So for us, we had to take a look at those factors. We're a hybrid organization. We have law enforcement folks where they absolutely cannot telecommute. And then we have the admin support group where, okay, they can telecommute. Some of them can, and some of them cannot. So we just have to weigh those options and afford those opportunities to our employees, and in preparation for us to bring them back into the work site.
Well, interesting kind of angle that we went on that question. Could you raise a lot of issues, which could be a whole different conversation in another episode of the issue of vaccines and how they relate to HR policies and, individual safety and what that means. I know an organization of a colleague's, a colleague I know, their organization just came out with a policy that to come back into the office, they need to be vaccinated. And so it's a choice. You don't have to come back, but those who are choosing to work, they're going to have to show. So, this whole concept of vaccine passports and how organizations are handling that, I think that will be an episode. We will have a future episode. So I'll be finding a guest on that or a couple guests who are handling it differently. So I think that'll be really interesting to see how that affects the individual, how that affects teams, how that affects organizations and organizational culture. So look out for that. That'll come soon. I was going to answer that question from a personal standpoint, kind of my what I'm looking forward to and my concerns, but also giving an organizational perspective of kind of the return. For me personally, I'm a high extrovert. I love being with people, but I've worked on my own for 20 years, and I'm very content and happy engaging with people in all different ways, and I've adjusted and adapted just fine. My business has been able thankfully able to adapt very well, to deliver most of our services, if not all of our services, remote as well, and in some cases even better. So our business model is changing, and so I think that's something to look at, is how organizations are going to take a pulse of what their talent, what their their employees want, and how they're going to be able to respond, how they're going to be able to adapt and experiment with not a one size fits all. I think there's a lot of organizations who do that well already, but there's maybe some more traditional organizations who always thought, we're a brick and mortar organization and our clients like FaceTime in the office and they want to come and meet with you, or something like that, or we do our most creative work together around a table or in a room. And because organizations have had to adapt, there's not going to be, for cultures who want to, kind of retain and develop maybe their most talented and creative, there's going to have to be an acknowledgement that autonomy can work and flexibility can work, and even work from anywhere can work. And so I'm seeing organizations now, as they're letting employees move. Client just one of this New York-based client, I know one of their leaders just moved to Texas. One of their leaders is moving, somewhere else, not near any of their offices. Mm-hmm. And they're looking at kind of the cost, the benefit, having an office that costs, $1 million a year. What does it mean to gather that group together? The employees, once a quarter in different setups. So there's a lot of exciting things. And interesting things and work that HR and organizational leaders are going to have to do. So as we get close to wrap up, if your organization is doing anything you want to share, we'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I'm going to share kind of just personally what I'm looking forward to. And then we're going to kind of look at the big rocks around kind of current state. And then we're going to wrap up. But I know for me, I have a balance of excitement and concern. Excitement about, being able to resume that face-to-face interaction, which definitely adds a level to, being able to support our clients and to connect with organizations. I miss that and I enjoy that. And, on a personal note, because some of my gains from this have been very personal, and that, again, my exercise, my meditation, my other, interests in kind of taking care of myself really well have increased. I'm worried because I know when I dive in, I can just say no to everything else and keep focusing on work. And so I know I'm going to need both support from, the people around me, my coach and friends, to make sure I don't let go of the gains I made during this last year. So that's kind of my piece. So as we wrap up, I would love to hear just your final thought around kind of the future of kind of work-life balance, work-life integration as we move in this direction of whatever the new normal is going to be. Any final thoughts of what you think individuals or organizations need to keep in mind?
I think that I would be interested to find out, levels of engagement with employees in organizations as, they're trying to provide, resources to help balance, work and life for their employees. Because I think with so much change that we've endured, it would be interesting to see, what those levels of engagement are for the last year, and see where that would take us. And I think that, just final thoughts on the matter, I think that for me as an individual and as a leader, one quote that really stood up and got me through it all was the quote that where it states, "You can't pour from an empty cup." And we need to go and take care of others, support them as leaders, but we also should not forget that we need to go and take care of ourselves. So the last thought I had, on this topic is, as I mentioned in my opening earlier, that we should lead with compassion and give grace to our employees, and of course, most importantly, give grace to ourselves as we go through this and get through this pandemic, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sharlene. So my final thoughts are around, well, actually, I want to build on the piece you said of, really, this is a great time to do, if you aren't doing it regularly, like a lot of organizations do engagement and pulse checks, very regularly. If that's not in, your operating systems right now, as we're in this transition, this is a great time to check in, organization-wide, team-wide, how people are doing, what they're feeling, what their concerns are, what they're looking forward to, and have your talent be part of the solution. There isn't going to be, just like with work-life balance in general, there is never a one-size-fits-all solution. This return to work, or return to, the new normal, or return to never normal again, whatever we call it, it's going to be really critical to engage people at all levels of your organization to solve it. And I know for me, again, I agree that you can't pour from an empty cup. I don't want to go back to not having good sleep, good exercise, good food, time with friends, even if it's virtual, while I do my work well. So that's what I'm hoping for. So, well, thank you, Sharlene. It was great to talk to you. And thank you, everyone who's watched. I will share, actually, Sharlene, if people want to reach you, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, they can reach me on LinkedIn, direct message me, or they can look up the Alameda County Probation Department website. My contact information is on there.
And we'll connect your LinkedIn in the comment section. So thanks all very much. Wishing you a good a great day, a great weekend, and we'll see you. Oh, next episode coming up is next Tuesday, April 20th. I'm talking with we're talking about high potential talent, and I think we were calling it the good, the bad, the ugly. And that's kind of a dramatic title, but we're talking about high potential talent done right, and some of the challenges that come with high potential talent development. So with that, thanks everyone. And someone just posted, I'll share the post. Great job, Sharlene. Excellent. All right, take care, everybody.
All right, bye.